Chapter 7. The King's Birthday Party.
A cart carrying large baskets of fruit arrived at the palace gates at about 9 o'clock on the morning of the party. Driving the cart was a red-faced man with a long blonde moustache. Under his wide hat, which hid much of his face, fiery blue eyes could be seen peering out. One of the musketeers guarding the gate came up to the cart and looked up at him.
Your business, master?
I have baskets of the finest fruit for the king's party,
said the driver, who spoke in a rough, local accent.
Your pass.
Pass? Nobody told me about a pass. Just bring the baskets here, that's what I was told.
No one can get in without a pass.
The driver grunted and stood up, showing his great size and enormous stomach.
This is the best fruit in all France,
he said, slapping one of the baskets with his hand.
What do you think is in here, officer? An army?
I have my orders, master.
And what will the king eat tonight, then? Bread?
The way the driver's face twisted when he said bread, it was clear he did not think much of bread himself.
I want to see my friend, Captain d'Artagnan. He'll surely let me in.
The musketeer looked at the driver as if to say, "How could a man such as you be a friend of the captain's?" But the guard called me anyway, and of course, I knew at once that the driver of the cart was none other than Porthos. I was glad to see that he was still alive.
My dear captain,
said Porthos, throwing his arms around me.
We have not seen you at the tavern for ages.
I know this man, I said to the musketeer. Let him in. I watched the cart as it rumbled through the gates and wondered how Aramis, Athos, and Philippe could breathe inside the baskets under all that fruit. Then I saw an eye appear at a hole at the back of the second basket. I had not been told the details of the plan. All I knew was that one of the many secret passages that led to the king's rooms came from the cellar. At some time during the evening, the four of them would enter the king's rooms, tie Louis up, and take him down to the cellar, leaving Philippe in his place. It sounded easy, but the king was not often alone, even in his own rooms, and he was well guarded. The people who worked in the palace were all very busy preparing for the king's party. The kitchen staff were the busiest, cooking food and making the enormous birthday cake which would hold 30 candles. The gardeners were cutting flowers to put in the ballrooms and dining halls, as well as along the corridors. It promised to be a grand occasion. Noblemen and noblewomen were coming from all over France to be there. It would be the event of the year. Little did they know that it would be Philippe's birthday party and not Louis's. At about 6 o'clock in the evening, André knocked at my office door. What is it, André?
Something very strange, Captain.
Yes?
A man came to the palace this morning with baskets of fruit. The guard at the gate said you knew him.
That's right. He works for a tavern I used to visit. What's the matter?
Well, the cart is still outside the cellar, but the driver is nowhere to be seen.
I pretended to laugh. That doesn't surprise me. He is either in the kitchen or asleep somewhere. Don't worry about Jacques. He's harmless.
If you say so, Captain. But I thought I ought to inform you.
Absolutely, André. You did the right thing. I was worried about André. Could Fouquet be paying him to keep an eye on me? Every man has his price, after all. He would certainly suspect something. He knew how careful I was, and normally I would have made sure the man was found and thrown out. I was soon to discover if André was Fouquet's man or not. About an hour later, I was checking security around the palace in order to make sure that no one but the invited guests could get anywhere near the king. There were many people in France at that time who would have paid a lot to have the king killed.
The king and Monsieur Fouquet wish to see you, Captain.
I looked around. It was André again. I went straight to the king's rooms, wondering if it had anything to do with the driverless cart. The king looked nervous, despite his proud air. Your Majesty, Monsieur Fouquet? I said, expecting the worst.
D'Artagnan, I am worried. You have not yet caught these traitors, and Fouquet is afraid that something is going to happen tonight.
Tonight, Your Majesty? With all these people about?
The perfect time for someone to kill me and escape into the crowd, D'Artagnan. I want you to be extra careful.
As always, Your Majesty. I have just finished checking security for the 3rd time tonight. Fouquet moved towards me.
D'Artagnan, why have you not caught these traitors?
They are clever men, Monsieur Fouquet, and well trained. I should know.
That is exactly why you should have found them. You know them. I don't believe you're trying hard enough.
Monsieur Fouquet, I am the king's loyal servant.
Yes, D'Artagnan, and it is your job to find traitors. Every musketeer in France knows their faces. Why haven't you caught them yet?
I am doing my best,
Your best is not good enough, it seems,
shouted Fouquet. Fouquet was angry and nervous, as much for his own skin as the king's.
That is enough, Fouquet. I trust D'Artagnan is doing his best. Now leave me, gentlemen. I wish to get ready for the party. D'Artagnan, on your way out, tell my dressers not to come for 10 minutes. I wish to have a short rest first.
I left, and Fouquet followed. The king was now alone. This would be the perfect time to make the exchange. But I hadn't been able to contact my friends since they arrived in the palace, so I didn't know what their plans were at this stage.
I have my eye on you, D'Artagnan.
Fouquet said. I could feel his eyes boring into my back as I walked away. I said nothing. It was now 9:30. The king would soon make his appearance. All the guests were waiting, along with the musicians who were playing light music before the king arrived and the dancing could start. The king would be the first to dance, probably with the queen, Marie-Thérèse, or his mother, Anna of Austria, or even with Louise, if he was in a mood to hurt both his wife and his mother. I waited nervously by the door to see which of the royal brothers would appear, Louis or Philippe. Fouquet was standing opposite me, dressed in gold. He was looking at me suspiciously. I wondered if he could sense how nervous I was. Suddenly the door opened and the king appeared. I tried to see whether it was Louis or Philippe, but I couldn't tell. The king smiled as the people pulled back to let him pass. Then I knew it was Philippe, because he passed Louise without even looking at her. Then I noticed the way he walked. Although he stood as straight as Louis, he was choosing his steps carefully, as if he didn't know where he was going. I looked over at Fouquet and felt sure he had seen what I had seen. The king moved slowly towards the top of the room. Everybody was waiting for him to choose his lady. He looked around trying to find the queen or his mother, but he couldn't. Most of the guests were holding masks in front of their faces. Philippe could not have known what masks they would be holding or what clothes they would be wearing at the party. I felt the tension in the air as everybody waited. I saw Philippe glance about nervously. Fouquet must have been sure by now that this was not Louis. It was as clear as day to me. Philippe looked at me for help. I was the only person in the room he knew, but to call me to his side would be too dangerous, especially at this moment. The musicians were waiting, their violins and bows ready. Philippe looked around at the lady nearest the throne, hoping that she would be the right one. Unfortunately, she was not. Of all the people in the room, he chose the lady who Louis hated most. An old favorite he kept at court only because her parents were the Duke and Duchess of Nantes. Louis would sooner have asked a servant girl to share the first dance with him than this lady. Fouquet moved towards Philippe.
Arrest that man!
He shouted.
He's an imposter! Musketeers! Arrest that man!
I pretended not to understand and didn't move.
Captain D'Artagnan, damn it! Arrest that man!
But I cannot arrest the king, Monsieur Fouquet.
He is not the king! Can't you see that, Captain?
I had to do as Fouquet said, and ordered 2 of my men to arrest Philippe. Fouquet was taking control of the situation.
We must find the king. Captain, call all your men and close off all exits from the palace. They can't have gone far.
I knew where the 3 musketeers and Louis would be, but I said nothing.
D'Artagnan, come with me and take 10 of your men. The traitors will be armed.
We searched every passage and room of the palace. As the horse and cart were still there, Fouquet suspected they had not left the palace. Then, as we were looking through the cellar, we heard a cry. It was Louis.
We found the rats. Arrest them, D'Artagnan,
said Fouquet. Within seconds, Aramis, Athos, Porthos, and Louis were standing before us. My men all around them. Aramis spoke.
Monsieur Fouquet, how nice to see you. We're sorry for disturbing the party. You want your king, I suppose.
You will die for this.
I would give him back to you, but what good is a dead king?
He was holding Louis by the neck.
You wouldn't dare.
Try me,
said Aramis, his sword making a small cut on the side of Louis's neck.
You can't escape, so what do you want?
to leave this place alive, and to have a guarantee that Philippe will not be harmed.
Fouquet thought for a moment. He could not risk the king's life. Louis was trying to speak.
Let the king speak,
said Fouquet. Aramis took the cloth off Louis's mouth.
Do as he says, Fouquet! Just let me go!
Not yet, Your Majesty. First we need good horses, and all the musketeers must put down their guns and swords.
Soon the horses were ready, and the gates of the palace opened. Louis was released, and the 3 musketeers rode off into the night. As soon as it was safe, Louis shouted,
After them!
We quickly got our horses ready and rode after them, but by now they were too far ahead for us to catch them. Thank goodness.